The phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 47 missed calls on Monday. 63 by Wednesday. By Friday morning, the number hit 103. Every buzz sent a small wave of satisfaction through my chest as I sat in my new apartment, coffee in hand, watching my old company's infrastructure crumble from the outside. 5 days earlier, I'd walked out of Apex Technologies with nothing but a box of personal belongings and a smile that confused everyone who saw it. My manager, Keith Sullivan, had just announced that the senior systems architect promotion, the one I'd been working toward for 3 years, was going to someone else. Not just anyone, Damian Cross, the office favorite who couldn't debug his way out of a paper bag but could charm his way into any room. I'd congratulated Damian with genuine warmth in my voice, shook his hand, smiled at Keith. Then I'd gone to my desk, quietly disabled the automated scripts I'd written that kept our servers running smoothly, documented absolutely nothing in my final reports, and tendered my resignation effective immediately. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody understood what they'd just lost. Before the full story unfolds, there's something worth mentioning. This channel is on a journey to reach 5,000 subscribers, people who appreciate stories about standing up for your worth without burning bridges or losing your integrity. If that resonates with you, the subscribe button is right there. No pressure, just an invitation to be part of a community that values self-respect as much as success. My name is Theodora Vance. Most people called me Thea. At 32 years old, I'd spent the last 6 years at Apex Technologies, climbing from a junior developer to the lead systems architect who basically held the entire backend infrastructure together with custom code and midnight oil. My parents ran a small hardware store in Ohio, the kind where they knew every customer by name and extended credit to families going through hard times. I grew up watching my father fix Mrs. Henderson's lawnmower for free because her husband had just passed, and my mother slip extra batteries into bags for families who couldn't quite afford them. They never made much money, but they made a difference. That upbringing gave me something most people in tech seem to lack, the ability to see people as humans first and resources second. I understood struggle. I understood what it meant to work twice as hard for half the recognition, and I understood exactly when someone was taking advantage of my good nature. Keith Sullivan was taking advantage, and he'd finally pushed too far. The morning Keith announced Damian's promotion started like any other Tuesday. I arrived at the office at 7:30, a full hour before most of the team, to check on the server loads and make sure the overnight batch processes had completed successfully. They had, of course. They always did when I was watching over them. Apex Technologies was a mid-sized software company that provided customer relationship management solutions to about 800 enterprise clients. Our platform wasn't flashy, but it was reliable. Hospitals used it. Banks used it. City governments used it. Downtime wasn't just an inconvenience, it could mean real consequences for real people. That reliability was largely my doing, though you'd never know it from the org chart or the company newsletters. I designed the current architecture 3 years ago when the old system started buckling under increased load. I'd written the monitoring tools that caught problems before they became disasters. I'd created the automated recovery scripts that could bring services back online in minutes instead of hours. I'd trained every new developer who joined the team on best practices and code review standards. My annual reviews were always exceptional. Keith told me repeatedly that I was invaluable and the backbone of the technical team. But when promotion time came around, there was always a reason to wait. Next quarter, next fiscal year, when the big project wrapped up, when the budget was clearer, 3 years of next time. Then Damian Cross joined the company 18 months ago. Damian was, objectively speaking, a decent mid-level developer. He could write functional code. He understood the basics of our stack. He didn't create disasters, but he wasn't exceptional. He wasn't someone who saw 3 steps ahead or who could diagnose a production issue by instinct. What Damian excelled at was visibility. He volunteered for every committee. He spoke up in every meeting, even when he didn't have much to say. He played golf with Keith on Saturdays. He remembered everyone's birthdays. He brought donuts on Fridays. I didn't resent him for that. Office politics was a skill like any other, and Damian had mastered it. What I resented was the assumption that visibility equaled competence and charm equaled capability. 6 months ago, Keith created the senior systems architect position. He pulled me aside after the announcement and said, "Thea, this role has your name written all over it. Get me a roadmap for the Q3 infrastructure upgrade, and we'll make it official." I'd spent the next 4 months designing a complete overhaul of our deployment pipeline. Containerization, orchestration, zero downtime deployments. I'd prototyped the entire system on my own time, documented every decision, created training materials for the team, and presented an implementation plan that would save the company roughly $300,000 annually in operational costs. Keith loved it. The CTO loved it. The presentation to the executive team went flawlessly. "This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need in a senior architect," Keith had said afterward, shaking my hand. "Let me formalize everything with HR. Should have the announcement by end of month." That was 6 weeks ago. This Tuesday morning, Keith called an all-hands team meeting at 9 o'clock. Unusual, but not unprecedented. I grabbed my coffee and joined the 23 other members of the engineering team in the large conference room. Keith stood at the front, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "Team, I have some exciting news to share," he began. "As you know, we created a senior systems architect position to help lead our technical strategy into the future. After careful consideration, I'm thrilled to announce that Damian Cross will be stepping into that role." The words hit me like cold water. Damian looked genuinely surprised. Either he was an excellent actor, or he genuinely hadn't known. He stood up to light applause, shook Keith's hand, and made a short speech about how honored he was and how much he looked forward to collaborating with everyone. I clapped along with everyone else. I kept my expression pleasant and interested. Inside, something crystallized into absolute clarity. After the meeting dispersed, Keith caught my elbow. "Thea, got a minute?" We stepped into his office. He closed the door and gestured for me to sit. "I know you were hoping for that position," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "And I want you to know that this doesn't reflect on your technical abilities at all. You're phenomenal at what you do." "Thank you," I said evenly. "The thing is, the senior architect role requires someone who can interface with stakeholders, manage up to executive leadership, and represent the team in strategic planning sessions. Damian has really shown strength in that area. He's got the soft skills that clients respond to." Soft skills. That's what my 3 years of overtime, my comprehensive documentation, my mentoring of junior developers, and my complete infrastructure redesign had lost to. Soft skills. "I completely understand," I said, and I meant it. I understood perfectly. "I'm glad you're being so professional about this," Keith continued, relief washing over his face. "The truth is, we need you right where you are. You're so good at the nuts and bolts, at keeping everything running. Damian will handle the strategic vision, but we absolutely need your execution expertise." Translation. Damian would take credit for ideas while I did the actual work. At my current salary, in my current role, with no advancement in sight. "That makes sense," I said. Keith beamed. "I knew you'd get it. You're a team player, Thea. That's why everyone loves working with you." I stood up, shook his hand, walked back to my desk. For about 20 minutes, I sat at my workstation and stared at my dual monitors without really seeing them. My mind was extraordinarily calm. There was no anger, no sadness, no sense of betrayal, just calculation. I pulled up my bank account. I'd been saving aggressively for years, living well below my means. Between savings and investments, I had roughly 14 months of expenses covered. More if I was frugal. I checked my email. 3 recruiters had contacted me in the past month alone. My LinkedIn profile, which I barely maintained, still got regular interest. The market for someone with my skills was exceptionally strong. I opened a text file and began to catalog exactly what I did at Apex Technologies that nobody else could do. The list grew quickly. The monitoring scripts that caught database deadlocks before they cascaded into full outages. The load balancing algorithms that distributed traffic during peak hours. The automated failover systems that switched to backup databases when primary ones hiccuped. The caching layer that kept response times under 200 milliseconds. The data reconciliation jobs that ran nightly to catch synchronization errors. None of this was in my official job description. I'd built all of it on my own initiative because I saw problems and fixed them. Most of it wasn't even documented beyond my personal notes. The code was commented, sure, but understanding why I'd made specific architectural decisions required context that existed primarily in my head. Damian didn't know any of this existed. Keith vaguely knew I'd automated some stuff, but had no idea of the scope. The rest of the team benefited from the stability without knowing what created it. If I left, how long would it take for everything to fall apart? I pulled up our incident history. Before I'd implemented my various systems, we averaged about 4 major outages per month, each lasting between 2 and 6 hours. Client complaints had been constant. The previous lead architect had quit in frustration. In the 3 years since I'd taken over, we'd had exactly 2 outages, both related to third-party service failures completely outside our control, and both resolved within 40 minutes. Nobody noticed when things worked perfectly. That was the curse of good infrastructure engineering. I made my decision. Opening a fresh document, I wrote a simple resignation letter. Professional, Courteous. Effective immediately, with 2 weeks' salary forfeited to accommodate the lack of notice. I cited pursuing other opportunities and thanked everyone for the experience. Then I systematically began to undo my safety nets. The monitoring scripts were the first to go. I didn't delete them, that would be sabotage and potentially illegal. I simply disabled them, changed the cron jobs to not execute. The code remained in the repository, but it would no longer actively run. Anyone looking at the server logs would see the scheduled tasks simply stopped. The automated recovery scripts got the same treatment. Disabled, not deleted. The load balancing tweaks I'd made were coded directly into configuration files. I reverted those files to the default settings. Again, nothing deleted, just returned to how they'd been when I'd arrived. The documentation I'd created for my infrastructure redesign, the one Keith had praised so highly, I'd written on my personal laptop, on my own time. It had never been officially submitted to the company repository. I moved it to an encrypted archive and removed it from my cloud drives. I went through every major system I'd improved and quietly removed my fingerprints. It took about 3 hours. Nobody interrupted me. Everyone assumed I was just doing my usual work. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Apex Technologies' infrastructure was back to the state it had been in 3 years ago. Functional, but fragile. Capable, but without any safety margins. It would work fine under normal conditions. But the moment anything unusual happened, a traffic spike, a database hiccup, a network glitch, there would be no automated systems to catch it. They'd have to fix problems manually if they could figure out what the problems were. I printed my resignation letter, signed it, and walked to Keith's office. He was on a call but waved me in. I waited silently until he finished. "What's up, Thea?" I handed him the letter. His eyes scanned it quickly, and his expression morphed from confusion to concern to something approaching panic. "Effective immediately? Thea, what's going on? Is this about the promotion? Because we can talk about a raise, a title bump, maybe a lead architect position." "I appreciate that," I said calmly, "but I've made my decision. I'll pack up my desk and be out within the hour." "You can't just leave with no notice. What about the infrastructure? What about the Q3 deployment project? The infrastructure is documented in the company repositories. Any competent engineer can maintain it. As for the Q3 project, I'm sure Damien will have excellent ideas for moving forward. That's why you promoted him, isn't it? His strategic vision?" Keith's face went red. "Thea, be reasonable. We need transition time. At least give us the 2-week standard notice." "I'm forfeiting the salary for those 2 weeks. According to my employment contract, that's acceptable for immediate resignation. HR confirmed it when I checked this morning." I had indeed called HR before disabling anything, just to make sure I was legally covered. "This is incredibly unprofessional," Keith said, his voice hardening. "After everything this company has done for you." That almost made me laugh. Almost. I've given this company 6 years of exceptional work. I'm leaving professionally and legally. My resignation is effective as of now. I turned and walked out before he could respond. Packing my desk took 30 minutes. I didn't have much. A few photos, some personal books on programming, a coffee mug my parents had given me, a small succulent plant that had survived on my desk for 4 years. A few coworkers stopped by, surprised by the sudden departure. I told everyone the same thing. I'd been presented with an opportunity I couldn't pass up, and I wished them all the best. Damien approached as I was sealing my box. "Hey Thea, I just heard. I want you to know. I didn't ask for the promotion. I didn't know you were up for it too." I believed him. Damien wasn't malicious, just oblivious to his own privilege. "Congratulations on the new role," I said genuinely. "I hope it goes well for you. Is there any way I could convince you to stay, or at least to grab coffee sometime in the next couple weeks? I'd love to pick your brain about the infrastructure. Keith mentioned you'd done a lot of custom work." "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said. "All the code is in the repository. Good luck, Damien." I walked out at 2:15 on Tuesday afternoon. Several people looked confused. A few looked concerned. Keith watched from his office window, his phone already pressed to his ear, probably calling HR or his own manager. The sun was bright outside. The parking lot was half empty, as it always was in the middle of a workday. I loaded my box into my car, sat in the driver's seat, and took a deep breath. Then I turned on the ignition and drove away. The first call came Wednesday morning. "Keith," I let it go to voicemail. "Thea, it's Keith. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. Can we talk? Call me back." I deleted the message. 3 more calls from Keith came throughout Wednesday. 2 from the HR director, Natalie. 1 from the CTO, Lawrence Morrison, which was unusual. Lawrence barely knew who I was despite the fact that I'd kept his entire technical operation running smoothly. I didn't return any of them. Wednesday evening, I treated myself to a nice dinner at an Italian restaurant I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I ordered wine. I savored every bite. I went home and slept for 9 hours straight, the best sleep I'd had in months. Thursday, the calls increased. Keith called 6 times, Natalie called 4 times, Lawrence called twice. Then a number I didn't recognize, probably someone else from the company calling from a personal phone. I blocked nothing. I just didn't answer. Thursday afternoon, I went to a coffee shop and updated my resume. I sent it to the 3 recruiters who'd contacted me most recently, along with a note that I was immediately available. All 3 responded within 2 hours. One already had 2 companies that wanted to interview me. Thursday evening, Damien texted me. We'd never texted before, but I'd given him my number once for an on-call rotation. "Hey Thea, really hope you're doing okay. Would love to buy you coffee and chat about the systems when you have time. No pressure." I didn't respond. Friday morning, I woke up to 47 notifications, missed calls, voicemails, text messages, even a LinkedIn message from Lawrence. I made coffee, scrambled some eggs, and sat down to actually listen to a few of the voicemails. Keith's Friday morning message was instructive. "Thea, we're experiencing some technical difficulties and could really use your expertise. I know you've resigned, but I'm authorized to offer you a consulting rate of $200 an hour if you could just help us troubleshoot a few things. Please call me back as soon as possible." $200 an hour. My salary had worked out to about $62 an hour. Interesting how my value had suddenly tripled. Lawrence's voicemail was more direct. "Theodora, this is Lawrence Morrison. We need to speak urgently regarding some systems issues. I'd appreciate a call back today." Natalie's message was professional but tight. "Thea, I understand you've resigned, but we need to schedule an exit interview and discuss some knowledge transfer. Please contact me to arrange a time." Knowledge transfer. That's what they called it when they realized nobody else knew how anything worked. I deleted all the messages and went for a run. Friday afternoon, a recruiter called with an offer to interview Monday morning at a company called Zenith Solutions. They were a competitor to Apex, slightly larger, with a reputation for treating engineers well. The position was Principal Systems Architect, a level above what I'd been denied at Apex. The salary range started at 40% higher than what I'd been making. I scheduled the interview for Monday at 10. Friday evening, as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed with a call from my old desk number at Apex. Someone was calling from my former workstation. That meant someone was sitting at my desk, probably going through my files, trying to figure out what I'd been working on. I let it ring. A text came through from Keith. "Thea, please. We have clients down. People are being affected. I know you care about doing the right thing. Help us out here and we can discuss whatever you want. Name your terms." That message told me everything. Multiple clients were experiencing outages. The automated systems I'd built weren't catching the problems. The team didn't know how to fix issues that my scripts had been resolving invisibly for years. I did care about doing the right thing. That's why I'd built all those systems in the first place, not for recognition or promotions, but because hospitals and banks and city services depended on the platform being reliable. But I'd also done the right thing by myself. I'd given Apex 6 years of loyalty and excellence. They'd responded by passing me over for someone less qualified because he was better at golf. The systems failing weren't failing because I'd sabotaged anything. They were failing because the infrastructure had always been fragile, and I'd been the one masking that fragility. Now the mask was off, and they were seeing the real state of things. I didn't respond to Keith's text. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled onto my couch with a book I'd been meaning to read for 6 months. The phone continued to buzz periodically throughout the evening. By the time I went to bed Friday night, I had 103 missed calls. Saturday morning was quiet. No calls before 9 a.m., which suggested everyone had finally gone home Friday night and gotten some sleep. The outages had probably been resolved, manually, painfully, but resolved. Around 10, my phone rang. Not Keith this time. Lawrence Morrison, I answered. "Theodora, thank you for picking up." His voice was carefully controlled, but I could hear the stress underneath. "Good morning, Lawrence." I'll cut to the chase. We had multiple service outages yesterday affecting 17 clients. Some of those clients are extremely unhappy. We've spent the past 18 hours manually resolving issues that apparently were being automatically handled before. "I see. I'm told you built those automated systems." "I built several tools to improve reliability, yes. Those tools are no longer functioning. I disabled my personal automation scripts when I resigned. The core systems are all still operational. They're in the same state they were when I joined the company." A pause. "The same state they were when we were having 4 outages a month. I wouldn't know about that. Before my time?" Another pause, longer this time. Theodora, I'll be frank, I didn't know the extent of what you were doing. That's my failure as a CTO. Keith assured me he had the technical operations under control, and I trusted that. I didn't look closely enough at who was actually making things work. That was probably the closest I'd ever get to an apology from executive leadership. I appreciate you saying that. We'd like to bring you back. Not in your old role. The senior systems architect position that went to Damien, we'd like to offer that to you instead with an immediate start. We'll also increase the salary by 30% and include a signing bonus to compensate for this situation. 30%. The promotion I'd been chasing for 3 years finally offered now that they were desperate. I have an interview Monday for a principal architect role elsewhere, I said. Principal architect. We could create that position. 40% salary increase. You'd be Damien's senior, reporting directly to me instead of to Keith. 40%, reporting to the CTO. A week ago, that would have been a dream offer. What happens to Keith? I asked. That's an internal personnel matter, but I can tell you that his judgment is being reviewed. And Damien? Damien is, in over his head. He's admitted as much. He'd likely move to a project management role where his communication skills would be better utilized. So Damien would land on his feet. Keith would probably get a slap on the wrist but keep his job, and I would come back to clean up the mess, this time with a better title and more money. I need to think about it, I said. I understand. But Theodora, I need an answer by Monday morning. We have clients threatening to leave. We need stability, and apparently you're the only one who knows how to provide it. There it was, the leverage. The admission that I hadn't just been a good employee, I'd been an essential one. I'll let you know Monday, I said, and ended the call. I spent Saturday afternoon making a list. Not a pros and cons list, I already knew what made logical sense. Instead, I listed every time I'd been overlooked, undervalued, or taken for granted at Apex. The time I'd worked through Christmas break to resolve a critical security vulnerability while Keith was in Cabo and didn't even get a thank you. The time I'd trained a new hire who was then promoted above me within a year because he was leadership material. The time my suggestion in a meeting was ignored, then praised when Damien repeated it verbatim 10 minutes later. The time Keith told me I should smile more in meetings if I wanted to be taken seriously by executives. The time I was excluded from a team dinner because they assumed I'd be busy when every male engineer on the team was invited. Small cuts. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. None of it actionable, none of it dramatic enough to complain about. But cumulatively, it painted a picture of a workplace that would never truly value me no matter what title they offered. Sunday, I drove to my parents' house for dinner. My mom made pot roast. My dad asked how work was going and I told them I'd quit. Good, my dad said immediately. That place never appreciated you. My mom nodded. You've been looking tired for years, honey. What's next? I explained about the interview Monday and about Lawrence's offer. What do you want to do? My mom asked. That was the question, wasn't it? The practical answer was to take Apex's offer. Principal architect, 40% raise, reporting to the CTO. It was vindication. It was everything I'd been working toward. But I remembered something my father had told me when I was 16. Working my first job at a local grocery store, where the manager kept scheduling me during times I'd explicitly said I wasn't available. Thea, he'd said, there's a difference between being needed and being valued. People will always need someone competent and reliable. But if they don't value you until you're walking out the door, they don't really value you at all. They just don't want to be inconvenienced. Apex needed me. That was obvious. But did they value me, or did they just not want the inconvenience of having to fix their own infrastructure? I think I want to see what else is out there, I said. My dad smiled. That's my girl. Monday morning, I put on my best interview outfit and drove to Zenith Solutions. The office was modern, bright, with an open floor plan that somehow didn't feel chaotic. The engineers I passed in the hallways looked focused but not stressed. The interview was with the VP of Engineering, a woman named Autumn Hayes, and the current director of Infrastructure, a guy named Ryan Park. They'd clearly done their homework. We've been trying to recruit someone of your caliber for 6 months, Autumn said after introductions. Your work at Apex is well known in the industry. Their reliability metrics improved dramatically during your tenure. Thank you, I said, surprised. I didn't think anyone outside the company tracked that. We checked, Ryan added with a smile. Publicly available uptime data. You took them from 94% availability to 99.7%. That's exceptional for a platform that complex. The interview lasted 2 hours. We talked about architecture philosophy, about building resilient systems, about technical debt, and how to manage it. We discussed their current challenges, scaling to meet growing demand, modernizing legacy components, improving deployment frequency. It felt like talking to peers who understood the work. Not people who saw engineering as a mysterious black box, but people who'd been in the trenches themselves. "I'll be honest," Autumn said toward the end. "We heard through the grapevine that you left Apex last week. We moved up this interview because we didn't want to miss the opportunity. We're prepared to make an offer today if there's mutual interest." "I'm definitely interested," I said. Ryan and Autumn exchanged a glance. Principal Systems Architect, as discussed. The salary is $190,000 base, plus a 20% annual bonus target, plus equity. 4 weeks PTO. Full remote option 2 days a week. We'd want you to start in 2 weeks if possible. $190,000. That was 58% more than I'd been making at Apex. The equity alone was probably worth more than the signing bonus Lawrence had vaguely mentioned. "I do have another offer on the table," I said carefully. "From my previous employer. They've asked me to return in a senior role." Autumn nodded. "That's not surprising. Can I ask what's making you hesitate about returning?" I chose my words carefully. "I'm not sure the culture there is one where I can grow long-term." "Culture matters," Ryan said. "For what it's worth, our retention rate for senior engineers is over 90%. People tend to stay because they feel valued, not just needed." Valued, not just needed. My father's words echoed. "Could I have until end of day to decide?" I asked. "Absolutely," Autumn said. "Take the time you need." I sat in my car in Zenith's parking lot and called Lawrence Morrison. "Theodora," he answered immediately. "Have you made a decision?" "I have. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to decline." Silence. "May I ask why?" "We're offering you everything you asked for, everything you've earned. You're offering it now because you have to, not because you want to. There's a difference." "That's not entirely fair. I genuinely didn't understand your contributions until this crisis. Now I do." "I believe you," I said, "but I've also realized that I don't want to work somewhere that only recognizes my contributions during a crisis. I want to work somewhere that sees my value consistently." Another pause. "We could work on the culture issues. With you in a leadership position, you could help drive that change." It was a reasonable argument, but I was tired of reasonable arguments that put the burden of fixing broken systems on the people most hurt by them. "I appreciate that, Lawrence, but I've made my decision. I do have one request, though." "Name it." "My automation scripts are disabled, not deleted. They're in the repository in a directory called Theo Vance Automation. The documentation is minimal, but any decent engineer can figure them out with some time. You have my permission to use them, modify them, whatever you need." I heard him exhale. "That's generous, thank you. I didn't build those tools for recognition. I built them because the platform serves important clients who need reliability. I don't want hospitals or city services to suffer because of office politics. For what it's worth, Theodora, I'm sorry, you deserved better from us." "I did," I agreed, "but I'm finding better now. Good luck, Lawrence." I ended the call and immediately dialed Zenith Solutions. "Autumn Hayes." "Autumn, it's Theodora Vance. If the offer still stands, I'd like to accept." I could hear the smile in her voice. "It absolutely stands. Welcome to Zenith, Thea. I think you're going to do great things here." The paperwork was finalized by Wednesday. I negotiated a start date 3 weeks out. I wanted some actual time off between jobs to decompress and reset. The calls from Apex finally stopped after I sent a brief email to Lawrence, Keith, and Natalie confirming that I wouldn't be returning and that the automation documentation was available in the repository. Keith sent a terse reply. "Received." Natalie sent a professional note about exit paperwork and final paycheck details. Lawrence sent something different. "Thank you for the documentation and for your years of service. I mean it when I say we failed to recognize what we had. I hope your next role appreciates you the way we should have. If you ever need a reference, don't hesitate to reach out." It was a small gesture, but it meant something. Damien sent a text. "Heard you're not coming back. Totally understand. I'm actually moving to a PM role. Turns out I'm way better at managing people than systems. Thanks for being cool about everything. You're going to kill it wherever you end up." I replied to that one. "Thanks, Damien. Good luck with the PM role. I think you'll be great at it." And I meant it. Damien wasn't the villain in this story. He was just a person who'd been given an opportunity he wasn't qualified for by a manager who valued the wrong things. The system was broken, not the individuals caught in it. Well, Keith was kind of a villain. But even Keith was more incompetent than malicious. The 3 weeks between jobs were revelatory. I'd forgotten what it felt like to wake up without immediately checking my phone for overnight alerts. I'd forgotten what it felt like to read a book in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. I'd forgotten what it felt like to exercise, cook real meals, see friends, exist as a full person rather than just a work function. I also did some reflection on my own role in what had happened. Had I been too passive? Had I failed to advocate for myself effectively? Should I have been more politically savvy, more like Damien in building relationships with leadership? Maybe, but also I'd been doing the work. Real, valuable, essential work. And in a functional organization, that should matter at least as much as golf games and committee meetings. The problem wasn't that I'd failed to play the game. The problem was that the game was rigged. My first day at Zenith Solutions was everything the first day at Apex hadn't been. Autumn personally gave me the office tour. Ryan introduced me to the infrastructure team, 8 engineers who seemed genuinely excited to have another senior person to collaborate with. My workstation was already set up with the equipment I'd requested. There was a welcome packet with information about benefits, culture guidelines, and even a handwritten note from the CEO welcoming me to the company. Small things, but small things that communicated value. The infrastructure itself was in decent shape, better than Apex had been when I'd started, but with room for improvement. In my first week, I identified 3 key areas where we could increase reliability and reduce manual intervention. I proposed a project plan to Ryan, who immediately greenlit it and assigned me 2 junior engineers to help with implementation. "This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we hired you for," he said, reviewing my proposal. "Do you need any additional resources?" Additional resources. At Apex, I'd had to beg for every hour of developer time. Here, they were asking what I needed to succeed. "I think we're good to start," I said. "I'll let you know if that changes." "Please do. We'd rather over-resource a project like this than have it stall out." By the end of my first month, we'd implemented the first phase of improvements. Deployment times were down by 30%. The on-call rotation was getting paged 40% less, frequently, because automated monitoring was catching and resolving issues proactively. Autumn called me into her office on a Friday afternoon. "Thea, I've been hearing great things from Ryan and the team. I wanted to check in and see how you're feeling about the role." "Honestly, it's the best job I've ever had," she smiled. "I'm really glad to hear that. I also wanted to give you a heads up. We're planning to expand the infrastructure team significantly over the next 6 months. We're going to need someone to lead that expansion. Would you be interested in stepping into a director of infrastructure role? You'd be at the same level as Ryan, but focused specifically on platform reliability and scaling." Director. A full leadership position. At Apex, that had been at least 5 years away, if it ever happened at all. "What would happen to Ryan?" I asked. "Ryan's moving into a director of platform engineering role, focusing on product infrastructure and feature development. You two would be peers, collaborating closely but with distinct areas of ownership. We've already discussed it with him, and he's enthusiastic about the idea." "Then yes, I'm very interested." "Excellent. We'll formalize everything over the next few weeks, but I wanted to float the idea now so you could start thinking about how you'd want to structure your team." I walked out of that meeting somewhat dazed. 4 months ago, I'd been fighting for a promotion I'd more than earned. Now I was being offered a director role before I'd even finished my probationary period. The difference wasn't my skills. I was the same engineer I'd been at Apex. The difference was being in an environment that recognized and rewarded those skills. That evening, I called my parents. "They're promoting me," I told them, "to director." "Already?" My mom laughed with delight. "Honey, that's wonderful. I mean, it's not official yet, but yeah, 4 months. "That's how it works when people actually value you," my dad said. "They don't make you wait and beg and prove yourself over and over. They just recognize what you bring and make room for you to grow." He was right. About 6 months into my time at Zenith, I ran into Damien at a tech conference. He spotted me across the expo hall and made his way over. "Thea, how are you?" "Really good. You?" "Good, yeah, I'm actually not at Apex anymore either." "Oh, what happened?" "After you left, everything kind of fell apart for a while. They got the system stable again, eventually using the documentation you left, but it was a rough few months. Keith got reassigned to a different department. I did the PM thing for a bit, but honestly, I realized I wanted to try something completely different. I'm doing technical sales now at a startup. Turns out I'm actually pretty good at it." "That makes sense," I said. "You were always great at client relationships." "Thanks. And hey, I wanted to say, I'm sorry for how everything went down. I've thought about it a lot, and I got a promotion I didn't really deserve while you got screwed over. That wasn't right. It was the acknowledgement I hadn't known I needed. I appreciate that," I said, "but honestly, I'm glad it happened. I'm in a much better place now." "I heard you're at Zenith. That's a great company." "It really is." We chatted for a few more minutes, then parted ways. There were no hard feelings. Damien had been a symptom, not the disease. 2 years after leaving Apex, I was a VP of infrastructure at Zenith. The company had gone public, and the equity I'd been granted was worth enough to fully pay off my student loans and make a down payment on a house. More importantly, I led a team of 43 engineers across 3 continents. We'd built one of the most reliable platforms in the industry. We were regularly cited in case studies about engineering excellence. I was invited to speak at conferences, to write articles, to mentor other technical leaders. Everything I'd wanted to achieve at Apex, I'd achieved elsewhere. And I'd achieved it faster because I was in an environment that valued growth over politics. I still thought occasionally about that Tuesday morning when Keith announced Damien's promotion. About the moment of decision when I chose not to fight for scraps, but to find somewhere that would offer me the full meal. It was the best professional decision I'd ever made. Not because of revenge or vindication, though there was a small satisfaction in proving my worth elsewhere, but because it taught me that loyalty should flow both ways. That being needed isn't the same as being valued. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away from people who don't appreciate what you bring. I thought about the 103 missed calls. The desperation of people who'd taken my contributions for granted, suddenly realizing what they'd lost. I'd never answered those calls, and I'd never regretted that decision. The servers I'd stopped maintaining eventually got fixed, not by me, but by new engineers who were probably more expensive and less familiar with the systems. The company survived, though diminished. The clients who depended on the platform found alternatives or suffered through the instability. None of that was my responsibility. My responsibility was to myself, to my career, my growth, my well-being, to the team I now led and the culture I was helping to build, to being the kind of leader I'd wished I'd had at Apex. On the 2nd anniversary of my departure from Apex, my team threw me a surprise celebration. They'd made a ridiculous cake with frosting that read 2 years of not answering their calls, because I'd apparently told that story enough times that it had become team lore. Speech, someone called out. I laughed. Okay, brief speech. 2 years ago, I was in a job where I was essential but invisible, where I did my best work and watched other people get credit and opportunities. I was loyal to a fault, and that loyalty was never reciprocated. The room was quiet now. Walking away from that was terrifying, but it taught me something crucial. Your value doesn't change based on whether people recognize it. What changes is whether you're in a place that allows that value to flourish or a place that suppresses it. I looked around at my team, people I'd hired, mentored, fought for. I'm in a place now where value is recognized, where hard work leads to growth, where loyalty flows both ways, and I'm committed to making sure every single person on this team feels that way too, because nobody should ever have to choose between their self-respect and their career. The room erupted in applause. Later that evening, as I was packing up to head home, I found myself thinking about Keith, about Damien, about Lawrence, about all the people who'd been part of that chapter of my life. I didn't hate any of them, I didn't wish them ill, but I didn't miss them either. I'd built something better, something that was mine in a way that Apex never could have been. My phone buzzed. A text from Autumn. Dinner next week. Want to discuss the Q4 strategy and also float an idea about you taking on cloud infrastructure too. No pressure, just curious if you'd be interested in expanding your scope. I smiled and typed back, absolutely, let's talk. This was what it looked like when someone valued you, when opportunities were offered, not begged for, when growth was encouraged, not gate-kept. I shut down my laptop, turned off my office light, and headed home. The servers would be fine overnight. The automated systems would catch any issues. The on-call rotation was staffed with competent engineers who knew how to handle problems. Everything worked smoothly because we'd built it to work smoothly, and because we'd built a team culture where people wanted to do excellent work. I'd learned a lot in the 2 years since I'd walked out of Apex Technologies. I'd learned that being irreplaceable in one place just means you're trapped. Being valued means people want to help you grow beyond your current role. I'd learned that the best revenge isn't sabotage or public callouts. It's building something excellent somewhere else and never looking back. And I'd learned that 103 missed calls from people who'd taken you for granted is actually a very satisfying number. I never called them back. I never needed to. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the one keeping things running while someone else got the spotlight, or if you believe that knowing your worth is the first step to finding where you're truly valued, that subscribe button is still there. This channel is built for people who understand that self-respect and success aren't opposing forces. They're the same thing. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being part of a community that values substance over performance. Now go build something excellent, and never settle for being needed when you could be valued instead.